What's up, folks? I'm Chris, your NFL writer here at Occupy Fantasy, here with a look at the giant 13-game Week 18 main slate in NFL DFS this week on FanDuel and DraftKings. It's going to go over some of the top plays, picks, and lineup advice to help you close out this year's NFL regular season strong. One of the more balanced slates we'll ever see every season. We have 6 games in the 1 p.m. window, 7 games in the late 4:25 p.m. window. Actually gives you a good opportunity to play early only and afternoon only slates if that's your sort of thing. But regardless of how you choose to approach this slate, we're going to give you the top plays that you need to succeed. If you've been with us all season long, you know that my normal approach is to go over the biggest favorites on the board to look at the running backs that are in the most favorable game scripts on the board. Well, as we know by now, after watching 17 weeks of action, and if, like me, you depended on Tony Pollard as your fantasy running back in regular leagues, you know that he is not good at football this year. So CeeDee Lamb is going to be the best play for the Cowboys in their anticipated game script here against the Washington Commanders. The Cowboys are favored by 12 points here, and they need to win this game in order to wrap up the number 2 seed, a home game in week 1 of the playoffs, and week 2 of the playoffs if they're able to advance. Lamb, with his massive, almost 40% target share in recent weeks, is going to be the guy that we want to deploy pretty heavily this week. He's going to be 40% owned in DFS contests this week because of the cheap plays that we have available on some other teams due to the nature of week 18. So the bottom line in low-risk contests, probably in high-risk contests as well, get CeeDee Lamb into your lineups this week. The field is going to be doing so pretty liberally. To talk about the matchup for the running back here, obviously Tony Pollard is going to catch a decent amount of ownership himself here against Washington. The Commanders are roughly league average defending running backs this year, 16th by DVOA, and below average defending running backs in the passing game. So if you think week 18 is finally going to be the Tony Pollard regression week, it's definitely a good spot matchup-wise to consider that. Second biggest favorite on this slate is actually the Cincinnati Bengals. Cleveland Browns are one of those teams that are resting all of their starters because they have no way to improve their seeding. They're locked into the 5 seed next weekend. So Joe Flacco, we expect Jerome Ford, Kareem Hunt, Amari Cooper, Elijah Moore, David Njoku. All these guys are either going to not play at all or see very limited reps. The Bengals, yeah, they've been eliminated as well, but they've been playing with this same group for a while. Really, I don't think we're going to be playing Cincinnati Bengals running backs this week, to be honest with you. But just to go over the matchup, second biggest favorite on the board, favored by a touchdown. They are facing a Browns defense that has been top 5 defending running backs both on the ground and through the air. If the Bengals mix in some of their backups, Chase Brown will have the best opportunity to succeed as a backup running back here. The other running back to keep an eye on with the Bengals would be Travion Williams, who I do think would be next in line to see some work. But the bottom line here in week 18 is I don't know if I will trust Joe Mixon. He doesn't have an injury designation here going into this matchup with the Browns, but with the Bengals looking to the offseason and maybe not willing to risk injury with key players, I don't know if Joe Mixon is going to get the workload that we need here, despite the positive game script. Now, the third biggest favorite on the board on this slate is the San Francisco 49ers. Despite the fact that we know San Francisco is going to be resting Brock Purdy, it does seem like Kyle Shanahan is keen on getting some of his other starters reps. That's not going to be the case here at the running back position because Christian McCaffrey is dealing with a calf strain. Matt Barrows, who covers the 49ers for The Athletic, has reported that he expects Jordan Mason to get the majority of the touches here in Week 18 for the San Francisco 49ers. Elijah Mitchell is available to play this week, but I think he's a little higher on the depth chart. They maybe want to keep him fresh for their divisional round playoff game because they do have the bye week here in the wild card round. But Jordan Mason is going to be the most popular running back play on this slate. Going to be between 30 to 40% owned if you look at most of the projection models that are out there. Our own projections have him at just 8% here on DraftKings. I will deviate from Brian and Moose here and tell you I do think that's a little incorrect. Some of our popular competitors have Mason projected fairly highly this week. I think you do want to get him into your low-risk lineups at just 4,600 here on DraftKings and at 5,700 over on FanDuel. The 49ers are playing the Rams, who are also going to be resting the majority of their starters. The Rams have clinched a playoff spot. They cannot get a home game, so they're fine with their fate in wildcard weekend and being a road opponent for whoever they draw. That being said, even if the Rams played their starters, this is a below-average rush defense that Mason gets to go up against. They're roughly league average defending running backs through the air. The Philadelphia Eagles, unfortunately catching a loss last week against the Arizona Cardinals, changed their fate a little bit. They no longer are in the driver's seat to win the NFC East and have a home game next weekend. They are going to try to win this game because if for some reason the Washington Commanders are able to knock off the Cowboys, then the Eagles would still win the NFC East with a victory here over the Giants. 4.5-point favorites. DeAndre Swift has been the primary guy over the last several weeks of the NFL season. The problem here is he's got a questionable tag with an illness. So we will see exactly what the Eagles do at running back. We should learn more by about 4 p.m. today here on Saturday. If the Eagles promote anyone from the practice squad like Rashad Penny, then that might be an indicator of Swift's overall status and availability for this game. But it's hard to argue with the matchup. The Giants are the 4th worst rush defense defending running backs this year, slightly below league average defending running backs through the air. Obviously, week in and week out, the problem with Philadelphia running backs is once we get on the 1-yard line, it's going to be Jalen Hurts time, not DeAndre Swift time. But like the Cowboys, I would expect the Eagles to deploy a normal usage of their players this week. So Swift, Jalen Hurts, A.J. Brown, Dallas Goedert, these guys all very viable, should be playing in a positive game script against the New York Giants. Now, other than Jordan Mason, one of the other most popular plays in low risk this week everyone's going to be using is Zamir White at home against the Denver Broncos here. Josh Jacobs has been ruled out for the final regular season game for the Las Vegas Raiders, and this is going to be the best matchup on the board. The Broncos are actually the 32nd ranked DVOA rush defense. That's where Zamir White gets his work, right? We've seen 17 plus carries over the last 3 weeks. Not a tremendous amount of targets, save last week's game against the Colts, but should he see a similar target total this week against the Broncos as he saw last weekend against the Colts, it's actually the toughest matchup for a running back in the passing game against the Broncos this week. But White at $6,000 here on DraftKings and at just $6,500 over on FanDuel. Between Zamir White and Jordan Mason, these are going to be your most popular running back plays on the board. And at their low salaries, $4,600 for Mason, $6,000 for Zamir White, that should be enough to allow you to pay up for studs in other spots of your lineup. The other running backs that I do anticipate will be popular this week, Aaron Jones is going to have a really good opportunity now that A.J. Dillon has been ruled out. We've seen 20-plus carries for Jones over the last couple of weeks of the season, and now he draws a matchup in a must-win game for the Packers against the Bears. This is winning in for Green Bay. They win this game, they are in the NFL playoffs starting next weekend. It's a tough matchup for Jones on the ground. This is a top 5 rush defense from the Bears this season. However, they are the worst defense in the league defending running backs in the passing game, so I would hope the Packers look to get Jones involved as a pass catcher a little bit more this week, especially because a whole host of their wide receivers, Christian Watson, Jaden Reed, Dontavian Wicks, these guys are all questionable for Sunday. Expect a lot of them to return, but Jones should be the healthiest of the bunch here and is probably worth considering as the third man in low-risk lineups, given his cheap salary of $6,300 here on DraftKings, and we actually have him at $6,800 on FanDuel this week in a good spot against the Bears, playing in that late window, so it makes sense as a flex play, in my opinion. Other running backs that are playable in this spot, Ronnie Rivers should be the starter for the Rams with Kyren Williams ruled out this week. Rams are going to be resting Matthew Stafford, Kyren Williams, Cooper Kupp, Tyler Higbee, all these guys have them ready for the playoffs in the wildcard round. Ronnie Rivers has been the RB2 when available and healthy, so we're kind of just assuming he's going to get the majority of the work. We don't really have confirmation on that just yet from Rams beat writers. We're going to monitor that, and we'll update our daily plug if we get confirmation on it. But that will be why Ronnie Rivers is high risk only, in my opinion. Minimum price here on DraftKings and FanDuel this week. Definitely will allow you to fit in whoever you want if you got him in here as well. But there's just a lot of different directions that you can go. Week in and week out, as they have closed their disappointing 2023 campaign because of the Aaron Rodgers injury in week 1, Bree Hall continues to ball, my friends. 13 carries last week, 9 targets, 16 targets the week before against the Washington Commanders. This is going to be a snow game in New England on Sunday. The Jets are slight underdogs against the Patriots in the lowest total game on the board. So the Jets, therefore, have the lowest implied team total of the week. But Hall is going to get the majority of the opportunities to tote the rock here for the Jets, especially in the anticipated weather script. It's going to be a tough rush defense. The Patriots were the best rush defense in the NFL this season, but they were not so great defending running backs in the passing game, where they were 27th by DVOA. So if you're going to go off the beaten path a little bit here, I think Bree Hall is a great play at running back. Now, at wide receiver, Again, top of the video, favorite play on the board, CeeDee Lamb, going to get 10 plus targets. Maybe even get 17 targets again like he has 2 times in the last 5 weeks. Dallas is playing to win here against the Commanders. We want CeeDee Lamb in our low-risk lineups. If we look at the Occupy model and we sort by projected ownership, CeeDee Lamb is going to be 43% owned this week. And then we have other studs like Chris Olave from the Saints, Justin Jefferson from the Vikings, Devontae Adams from the Raiders, DeAndre Hopkins from the Titans. So these are all mid-range to expensive wide receivers. The first kind of pay down option that pops by projected ownership is New England's Demario Douglas, but I don't think you really need these guys this week. One spot that we are keeping an eye on that's super critical, the Jacksonville Jaguars and Christian Kirk. We should know by about 4 p.m. today when they make their activations formal. But Christian Kirk has been activated to practice. His 21-day practice window from injured reserve has officially been opened. He was limited in practice all week this week, and he is eligible to play on Sunday as long as they activate him tonight. He's the minimum price here on DraftKings, $3,000. The minimum price on FanDuel of $4,000. You get Christian Kirk in your lineup and his anticipated 5 to 6 targets at the minimum price. That pretty much allows you to do whatever you want. You can get Dak Prescott in here paired with CeeDee Lamb. You can play another stud like Justin Jefferson. We can play the most popular defense on the board in the Cincinnati Bengals as touchdown favorites against the Browns. We have $3,800 per player remaining to round out our lineup. There's a lot of cheap plays available that let us kind of get where we want to go here. This is primarily what the low-risk build is going to look like this week, especially with access to cheap running backs like Ronnie Rivers, Jordan Mason, and Zamir White. You don't have to play Jefferson. You can play someone like Olave. You can play someone like DeAndre Hopkins, and you still have $47,000 to $5,000 per player remaining to fill out these final 2 spots. At the tight end position, we actually love Tucker Kraft from the Green Bay Packers as a tournament play. We think he's just going to be 2% or less in most contests this week. Trey McBride, target monster, going to be 9 to 10 targets once again, around 6,000 on DraftKings, 6,700 on FanDuel. He's going to be a little cost prohibitive. Sam Laporte is going to be a little cost prohibitive. If we sort by projected ownership, we have Jake Ferguson from the Dallas Cowboys is going to be popular this week at his 6+ anticipated targets. Gerald Everett, who I liked a lot last week, is still extremely viable here against the Chiefs. 8+ targets every week here with all these receivers that have been missing time for the Chargers. He's just 3,900. So if we played Everett, we'd have 6,100 for this final spot. You can play with defense if you want to get someone that's a little bit more expensive here into that final spot here. But bottom line, folks, is this is where the low-risk lineup is going to be this week. If we don't get Christian Kirk, again, my favorite play that is cheap here is going to be Demario Douglas from the New England Patriots. We'll have to modify what we're working on a little bit here. We may have to come off Prescott at quarterback and consider someone a little bit further down the salary table, like Jordan Love, who's going to be playing to win here. Geno Smith, who's also going to be playing to win for the Seattle Seahawks, is pretty viable this week. And then the number 1 ranked play in our model is actually Jared Goff, so we could play him as well. 13 games, it means that we are not necessarily as concerned with correlation this week. 2-0 stacks, 3-0 stacks might be played a little bit more heavily by the field than 3-1 stacks, which we do like. But my favorite 3-1 on this slate is going to be the Green Bay Packers against the Chicago Bears. You can get Jordan Love in here. We can get his tight end, who's our number 1 tight end in the model, in Tucker Kraft. We can get DJ Moore in here. And then once we kind of get some news on who's going to be available at wide receiver for Green Bay, we can play really any of these guys, but they're all cheap, which makes this really nice, in my opinion. Christian Watson is expected to be back, so if we played him at 4,700, we'd have 51 for a final spot. This is a really interesting 3-1 in a game where the stakes are still meaningful here in Week 18. Green Bay needs to win to make the playoffs. The Bears would love to keep Green Bay from getting into the playoffs. DJ Moore has a really, really healthy target share in this offense. So I think this is one of the 3-1s that makes a ton of sense in DFS tournaments this week. Other stacks that are going to be popular, obviously, Dak Prescott with CeeDee Lamb. I think you can get away with that by itself. That's going to be the most popular build on this slate. Seattle and Arizona, also a game that I think you will see the field stack pretty heavily. You can get Trey McBride from the Arizona side as a bringback. On the Seattle side, Tyler Lockett is actually one of our underperforming wide receivers. So that's a 2-1 that you can deploy here. You use either the cheap Christian Kirk play if we get it, Demario Douglas, and we still have a decent amount of salary for the final play here on this slate. But that's how Week 18 is looking, folks. Pretty interesting slate, if I may say so, to round out the NFL season. Keep an eye out for our final regular season daily plug. We will have a plug on OccupyFantasy.com for the Buffalo Bills and Miami Dolphins showdown slate, the final primetime game of the 2023 regular season for you. We will still be updating this channel with content throughout the NFL playoffs for wildcard round, divisional round, conference championships, and the Super Bowl. So keep an eye out for that. More streams about playoff best ball and other best ball contests that will be available for NFL, NBA, PGA, MLB will be here before you know it, folks. And of course, our regularly scheduled programming for NBA day in and day out on this channel will continue to be uploaded and updated for you. Normally, I would say I'll be back same time, same place next week to talk to you about the next week of the NFL season, but we're at the end of the run here, folks. So thank you for sticking with us all season long for this regular season series of DFS previews of main slates, and I will talk to you when I talk to you.